call the Dealer Practices Committee meeting to order. Alice, if you'd be so kind to read the roll. Here.
Steve Farmer, Michael Ward, Ozzie Borges, Gardner Britt,
Here.
Rob Fisher,
Here.
Randy Harris, Chris Mayer,
Here.
Jeff Floyd, Mike Griffin,
Here.
Peter Scotty,
Here.
Andy Wilder.
Here. And we have a quorum, Alice?
Yes.
Okay. I want to thank everybody for attending and remind you that public comment will be taken for those items on the agenda and limited to those items on the agenda. Committee members, a summary from the last meeting is in your book. I assume if there's no objections, that summary is approved. Also, you have the updates from the last board meeting that you should have received in your notebook as well. And I assume there are no questions about that summary. Under old business, there's no items listed on the agenda under old business. Is there any old business from the floor? Hearing none, we will move to new business, and we have two topics of discussion today. Tab 1, Cash for You Auto LLC. William?
Yes, good morning, everyone. Cash for You, Your Auto LLC, and Amel Siddiqui. On July 14th, 2021, an informal fact-finding conference was conducted to address the alleged violations of Virginia Code Sections 46.2-1529, 46.2-1533, and 46.2-1575, number 2. Based on information provided at the conference, the hearing officer recommended the satisfactory inspection within 90 days.
Okay. Is there anybody in attendance to speak to this topic?
Yes, sir.
Okay. If you would please, if you would go to the podium and state your name, we'll have this discussion. Yes, go up to. Thank you very much.
Yes, sir. My name is Rahmatullah Bakrami, and I'm here on behalf of the Cash for You Auto. And my
Just give us 1 second. Thank you very much.
sure, no problem. Okay.
We want to make sure that everyone can hear you, so we're trying to turn the volume.
Okay.
We do this to everybody. This is our long pause before each case. We'll be right with you. Thanks for your patience.
No problem.
There's no trains are coming
Yeah.
through.
You can hear?
Yeah, go ahead, I'm just.
Well, let's, we're going to try to go ahead and maybe things will get better, but state your name again, if you would, please.
My name is Rahmatullah Bakrami, and I'm here on behalf of the Cash for Your Auto. And my boss supposed to be here this morning, but he had emergency. His name is Emal Siddiqui.
Okay.
So I'm here to, and whatever happened that was a misunderstanding between the inspector and them. So when they weren't there for inspect the company, or they said that you are closed. But we are open, and the gentlemen were there to supposed to show him all the folders and the documents, and it's still open and it's still going on. But and he just got hired, so he didn't know how to explain. So that's why he sent me here, and to say it was just miscommunication, and yeah.
And what is your role in the organization?
So in there, I'm like a salesman.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Are you a licensed salesperson?
To be honest, I mean, I don't have any license, no.
Okay. Okay. I'm not going to ask any other questions around that. Chris?
I will. So you're a salesman for this dealership, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and when you say you don't have a license, you don't have a sales license or you don't have a driver's license?
So we are not like exactly working in the sales, so we just working like, let's say like a manager. It's like pretty much like a manager, and he called me around 8:30 and 8:35, and I don't have any clue about this meeting, and that's all he said to come here, and that's what I explained.
How long have you been with the company, sir?
So we are there like I especially working with them maybe 2-3 weeks now.
You've been there for 3 weeks.
Yeah.
And when you go into work today, when you leave here, what are you going to do there?
Over there.
Yeah, what are you going to do today? What's your role?
So my role, so we are going to buy cars and make sure do the staff and do whatever they need, be over there with them.
So if I come to your dealership today to buy a car, are you going to help me?
Me or maybe somebody else over there.
Maybe somebody else?
Yes, sir.
Okay, awesome. Ron, we got a problem.
Okay. Any other questions? So you are selling cars?
Yes, sir, but we don't work in exact positions, so I can sell cars and I can be the management. It's like helper,
Okay. Okay. Any other questions? Just a recommendation.
Table this until inspection is approved. Who's licensed?
Yeah, well, you want to table the fine, because at this point here, the fine's valid. Slacking $1,000 fine is not, I think we charge $1,000.
Okay. Are there any other questions for this gentleman? Okay. Thank you very much.
No problem. Thank you so
Okay.
much.
You can be seated. Thanks.
Okay, sure.
Appreciate it.
Mhm.
So let's have discussion. Obviously, we're here for the violations that were surfaced as a result of the 5 inspections prior to this meeting, of which it dealt with records availability, which you briefly spoke to, and we have become aware of another situation. But I guess my question would be is, should we address what's in front of us? I think we should address what's in front of us, and then we just do another inspection. So I would, if everybody agrees, let's discuss what we know before we got that little bit of additional information on this case. The recommendation from the hearing officer Originally, there was a fine levied, and the recommendation was to do away with that fine. Because I think in the narrative, it said there was general interest by the dealership, right, to fix this problem, and there was a misunderstanding. Let's talk about that issue, if we would, please. Comments, thoughts?
Evidently, it's been misleading here to look at it. You know, there's deeper things going on here, much deeper problems. I would put a fine back on it, bring that fine back at least make it $1,000 plus a reinspection. But after we listen to this today, evidently we've got some real concerns.
Yeah. Well, I think our recommendation is going to include a satisfactory inspection of the facility. So it's just going to be a little quicker than normal.
I think we go one step further than that because there's obviously some foundational problems here. And I think we have this dealer go back through the dealer operator class because I think there's a lack of understanding here all the way around it to save him and his future and us as the dealers of Virginia. I think he needs to go through that class.
Okay. So far, a recommendation for the dealer operator class and a inspection, which we would do. We can move up that inspection process, obviously. And there's a little bit of a language barrier here too. So let's be careful not to jump to any great assumptions. Now, let's go back to the fine. It went from 1,000 to 0, I think is the way it read. We had a process in place in which we stepped the fine up each time. So what is your thoughts on that?
I would reinstate the $1,000 fine.
I would second that.
Okay.
And I agree with going back to the class.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Was that a motion? Because you said the word second, or senior, can you?
We
Excuse me.
extend this, that actually the dealer operator come here next time?
We could do that. However, we already have something in front of us that we need to act on. And I think the dealer operator will end up in front of us at some point in time.
But if somebody can explain, what happened, or, what measurement they taken to fix the problem, rather just slap it in fine, reinstate.
Well, I think that discussion came up in the original summary, what he had done to address the problem with the hours. Having access to records, I'm sorry. So I think in fairness to that side of the equation, it had been addressed. I do think at some point there'll be a follow-on case from, if I was to guess, but I think, Rob, you were piecing together maybe a motion that said $1,000, go ahead and state it, $1,000 fine,
And
dealer operator class, right? And successful inspection within, William, what's a reasonable period of time that we could do an inspection?
This week, that's up to the board.
Okay.
Can I comment on that?
Huh?
Can I comment on that?
Sure.
I think we get him through a class and give him time to understand what's going on, and then we put him through an inspection. That's my guess.
Okay. I'm not sure I agree with that. Okay. But I think you got to nip what you know. And I think what we know is there's some concern. So can I go back to where I think you were going? And then maybe, Chris, if you agree. So Rob, I think you were saying that you wanted to do $1,000 fine, dealer successful completion of dealer class, and an inspection within a week or 10 days. Is that reasonable?
It's the board's.
Okay, within a week.
I'm on that.
Within a week. You want to second that?
I'll second.
So the motion is $1,000 fine, successful completion of the dealer academy, and an inspection within 1 week. You have a second to that? Are we ready to take a vote? All those in favor, raise your hand, if you would, please. Okay. Opposed? No one opposed. So thank you. So, sir, what we've agreed on is a $1,000 fine. Your boss is going to have an inspection of his facility, and he's going to go to the dealer operator class again. Okay? Thank you. You may stick around if you'd like for the full board meeting, which will follow this. Okay, thank you very much.
Mr. Chairman, before you go to the next matter, should there be some type of referral to the staff to investigate licensing practices by this same dealer based on testimony?
Yeah, I think that's reasonable. I think we're gonna find that very quickly. Yes, okay. Tab 2 is Millennial Automotive LLC. Kayana Murray, is anyone here to talk to tab 2 Millennial Auto? Okay, William, if you could read the case, please.
Millennial Automotive LLC and Kayada Murray. Tab 2. On July 22nd, 2021, an informal fact-finding conference was conducted to address the alleged violations of Virginia Code Sections 46.2-1529, 46.2-1542, 46.2-1559, and 46.2-1575, number 6. Based on the information provided at the conference, the hearing officer recommended assessing a civil penalty of $11,500, suspension of dealer licenses until a satisfactory inspection can be completed in security of the POD records, and a satisfactory inspection of dealership records in special security and access to POD.
Okay, and there is nobody here to speak to Millennial Automotive LLC. Okay, discussion by the committee. Chris.
So looking through this, I see in some of the latter times, as far as the POD, print on demand, I see it's like somebody issued a front tag and a back tag that did it through the computer continuously. That's what I see in the latter part, but the earlier part, I don't see that. So we have 7,000 sets of tags here. And I do remember in the past seeing people selling tags online, some crazy stuff like that. And I think we might be faced with a situation here. Personally, I'm not okay with reducing the fine to $10,000. I think that if you have a blatant crime of issuing temp tags, because let's face it, temp tags could roll into so many other things that we don't even know the ramifications of. Giving people access to a car that shouldn't have it, you know, and those things. I think we should think seriously about a much greater fine than $10,000. This is not sending the signal out there that we want to send out there for somebody who's abused this ability or this privilege to use the POD.
And Mr. Chairman, just sort of follow on to that. Robert Stone is one of my senior agents. I'm going to ask him to take a referral of this information and investigate it, because I think that you're right. I think we have criminal.
Absolutely.
It appears that there may be criminal activity. Nobody is guilty until we get the facts. But this is, I've never seen a case more abusive than this one. 7,000 temp tags in 1 year, and I think he sold what, 46 vehicles? Or
100 and some. 100 and some. Yeah, there's between 111, 134, somewhere in there.
Yeah, and 3,200 reprints. So.
I think what I find concerning is there software not available that says, oh, this car just got its fifth license? At some point, you know, how did it get to this point? This is criminal, and this person didn't show up today to say this is what happened. And we're talking about 7,000.
William, comment.
To Chris's point, it's a $50,000 fine. If this is what we're doing, this is a crime at this point. And this is what, and I'm just asking, do we have that in place? To say, red flag, that we got a problem down here. And I'm just, when you read it, you go, oh my goodness. Right?
I'm just trying to figure out why you issued 7,000 tags.
That's number one, right?
I can add a couple comments as to why she's not here. We did talk to her Friday. She is having surgery today. We did ask her if she wanted to delay this hearing to the November meeting. She opted not to. We did explain to her that she could have done that, but we only allowed her to do so if she was going to be here today. It wasn't for surgery. Her comment was, y'all go ahead and you got it. Pretty much. So she's aware of what's going on. Now, as far as your question about the software stuff, I cannot speak for DMV system, but I can tell you this, that The system is not, it's a standalone for the most part, and if you change information in the system, whether it's the VIN number, the person's name, change the order, it sees it as an original issue. The system is designed to do what it's supposed to do, but people are getting around it by doing things to manipulate it.
There's no red flag. Why?
If you enter the information correct like you're supposed to, it will work like it's supposed to. If you change the information, it sees you as a new person.
Right. So Ron, I saw different cars and everyone, I went through the whole list. There were 7, and I saw, it's not like I saw the same car 10 times or
Right.
somebody like this. I
Right.
saw a different car, which means somebody had to physically put that information in there and hit print, which means there's a high possibility somebody was selling tags, you
Yeah.
know, and that's a big problem.
Right. And based on our discussion and the commissioner's comments, I mean, DMV will investigate this. So the investigative side of this and what goes forward from here will be DMV's deal. But what we have in front of us is a recommendation from a hearing officer for a $10,000 fine and suspension of the licenses. The original amount, I think, is if there was a quick calculation, was over $180,000. If it was $50 per tag and you did the math. So somebody else threw out another number, but we need to just respond to what's in front of us.
So $10,000 fine. What's the suspension?
I'm sorry,
What's the suspension?
the suspension is until they have a satisfactory inspection that they have locked down the POD process. This will not be an ongoing situation.
So there may not be the issue. Maybe it's not actually 7,000 tags.
No, it was 7,000. The senior, the issue is that they appear to have no control over the POD process. So the suspension, you asked what the suspension was for. The suspension is until they can prove to the field inspector that they have locked down the POD process.
If they can prove, then they probably be terminated rather than suspended.
If they can prove it, then the suspension would probably be waived. Yes. They can go back into business.
Go back in business.
That's what it says. That's what it says.
Tags are available again.
But there's not a recommendation on the table right now to revoke the licenses. There is a recommendation for suspension of the licenses and a $11,500 fine in total. 10,000 of which dealt specifically with the POD.
So if the inspection is done, whatever that is, and is actual fact that he issued 7,000 tags, I don't think anybody here would vote against not terminating this dealership.
I don't think, we're not inspecting this to verify the 7,000 tags.
Yeah.
That's been verified.
That's been verified.
We've already verified.
We're already there, yes.
There's no disagreement as to the numbers of the tags. The recommendation was just to make sure that their license is suspended until they can prove that the POD process has been locked down.
So is this dealer still a system? You only issue tags?
Not with a suspended license.
But they're not suspended.
They're not suspended yet. Yeah.
But when it is suspended, it cannot.
Right. They suspended, they cannot do business.
Ready for a
Chairman,
motion?
this lady here is from our Legal Services Office.
Good morning, I'm Alicia Moore, I'm the Deputy Director of the Vehicle Services Administration. So in regards to the issues of the print-on-demand tag, what I can work with Agent Stone is our print-on-demand hearing process. So as you go through your investigation, you can look into that and look into suspending the access of the dealer based on the facts that are found. You can do that.
And Alicia, EADA had a question that, I mean, this is a very small dealer. And you and William are both right. The way the system is, as long as you manipulate it, you can keep printing. But shouldn't we control the stock of paper we're sending? Because a dealer like this shouldn't sell more than a few hundred cars a year. And they've gotten paper to print 7,000 sets of tags. So can we somehow program that, okay, you are getting more paper than you need based on your sales from last year?
So currently, one of the processes to try to look at how many cars a dealer can sell. However, we can only see the Virginia sales, we can't see outside sales. So in order not to hinder the dealer's business, we try to give them 50% more, but with the pandemic and the things that have happened, we try to accommodate dealerships, but we try to stop that up front before the order is.
But this is far higher than 50%.
Absolutely. And we look into it.
We will have lessons learned from this, and I'll work with our vehicle folks, and we'll report back on changes in processes, procedures.
So I have a
Even
question.
if-
Does the record shows where these tags are issued to? It sure does. Who they're issued to, the car, I number.
So the only records we really have is what went on the system. There's no real records at the dealership to, that we're aware of at this point that would justify or,
Doesn't.
Substantiate
Itself
what-
has a VIN number on it?
I'm sorry.
Doesn't the temp tag itself has a VIN number on it?
We have all that.
So
VIN number,
track is-
your make and model of the car, customer whose name registered to.
all
They've got
the
everything. They've got enough to
tags.
go look at this and prosecute it. The question is today, do we feel that somebody who's grossly violated this, and I'll call it what it is, a privileged issue, temp tags at your dealership, is $10,000 enough for somebody who says, hey, I'm not going to go there. Good luck. Have a nice day. I don't think that it is. And quite frankly, with 7,000 tags, even if half of them were correct and half of them were not correct, you're at 3,500 tags where there was a violation, and at $10 a piece, that's a $35,000 fine. And I know one thing, if I was going to sell temp tags online, I'd probably sell them for $50 to $100 a pop and not have people waiting in line in Winchester to bring them in there in DC and Maryland and everything else, saying, hey, give me some temp tags. So I'm going to make a recommendation when you're ready, Ron.
Okay.
Where did the number 200 come from, times 50? Is it 500? I mean, this $10,000, I think, is quite light. And the person did not show up today. This is very, very serious and on so many levels.
William,
But
can,
I just would like to know where 200 times 50, 270,000.
I think that number might have been chosen by the hearing officer, but William can answer your $50 question.
Yes. When we bring cases before, we take a case with a dealer, we look at the whole case in its totality, and of course, we're about education first. So in this situation here, we looked at the case, saw the number of temp tags from issue, and it came to about $181,000 civil penalty. Normally, we would send a letter to the dealer telling them, you allegedly, this is your allegation here, the civil penalty is $181,000. Do you wish to pay it, or do you wish to appeal it? In this particular case, because it was so bad, we decided to skip that step and bring them straight to a hearing. So the hearing took place. The hearing officer is hearing the same thing that you were seeing and reading, and the hearing officer picked out the 200 times 50. Now, because normally we would use 250 per violation, but because of so many cases, of so many instances, we decided to go to $50, and it still was $181,000. So that's why it's before you now. Back at the last board meeting, I informed you guys that you will be seeing these cases coming forth. And this is one of the ones I'm talking about. There are some behind us that we have in the pipeline that are worse than this. So this is tip of the iceberg.
Did you want to make a comment, Alvin?
Alvin Melendez with the Virginia Independent Auto Dealers Association. We received a complaint about 2 months ago from a consumer about a particular independent dealer. And he went ahead and sent us information via email about what into play in both of them. And this particular time, the dealer was emailing temporary registrations to the consumer. So they were not even printing them. They were sending the consumer the temporary tags over an email for the consumer to print them at their house or their business. And what they were doing is they were altering the names of the vehicle registration, the mother and the son's name. They will change it for a middle name, they will change the last name for an A for an B. And they were altering that, and they succeeded in sending 5 different temporary tags. I forwarded this information to the board before and taking action in that manner. But not always are they doing
Just any further discussion? And any, yep, recommendation?
I'll make a recommendation that we charge this dealer with a $35,000 fine, which I'm giving them the benefit of the doubt at $10 a tag. And saying that, that doesn't mean that in the future, I'm going to hold my hand at $10 a tag either. This is egregious to me. And I think that $10,000 is for somebody who probably sold tags and made an incredible amount of money. You know, $10,000 is like, are you kidding me? Here's your money. Have a nice day and walk away from it. I don't think criminally they're going to get away with that. But I think right now we need to send a signal in the state of Virginia that we're not going to play around with these print-on-demand tags. So my recommendation would be $35,000. An immediate, obviously, that's your investigative part here with Mr. Stone and with your lady there. And I'll agree with Alvin that I don't believe that plastic means a hill of beans, because I can print these things in paper and throw them in the back window, and they're going to work the same as if they were on the back of the car.
So Chris, 35 plus the 1,500 for 36.5?
Correct.
Because there was an additional
Yes, sir,
1,500. Okay, so you're,
35,000
okay.
plus the 1,500.
So $36,500 fine
Correct.
and suspension of licenses.
Immediately, right.
Immediate suspension.
Yep.
Until they can prove that the POD process is locked down. Any further recommendations? How about dealer?
Operator?
Mhm.
Absolutely.
Okay. Okay. So dealer operator class, immediate suspension, lockdown until they can prove the POD process is in fact enforced systematically, a $36,500 fine. Do I have a second to that motion?
I'll second that.
We got it.
Okay. Rob? Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman, the only modification you may want to make, because I don't know, Robert, I don't know how quickly we will have this investigated and prosecuted if sufficient, but I'd hate for them to come back and say, look, we've got it fixed now. And then we take them to court and charge them with felonies, and then we may want to tie this to the investigation that we're going to be doing. Because I think the dealer board would like to know not only that they've locked down the system, but what happened when it wasn't locked down. That's just a thought.
So, I understand, Commissioner, so, but we have a suspension in place now, right? So are you saying, I don't know that.
It's going to continue until our criminal investigation is concluded. If the
I
board
think
is
that's
okay
more
with
than
it.
reasonable.
Okay, so 36,500 Dealer Academy, suspension of all licenses immediately until DMV investigation is completed,
And reports on that.
which would include locking down the POD
Yes,
process, I
yes.
assume. Okay, you good with that? That is the motion?
Can I ask another question? I'm sorry.
Yeah.
When you suspend the dealer operator, and I don't know how many salespeople, I forgot what you had, can you lock down, because I hate to see the salesman go to another dealership and continue. So I don't know if we can lock down the entire staff. And I don't know how to do
I
that.
think you gotta be careful.
You can't. I mean, that would be a result of a criminal investigation where other people are implicated. So I think at this point and that's right. Mr. Fisher, you second that motion?
Yes.
Robert's rules. And we're ready to vote on that motion. Okay, so I need to say again, 36.5, Dealer Academy, suspension of license until DMV completes their criminal investigation.
Clarifying point, you mentioned about suspension until the report is given, or going back to the board. So the earliest would be November.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I don't think we should hurry to try to get this dealership back open based on their activity. So they can wait till November.
I think it's a good call.
At a minimum.
Yeah.
Okay, all those in favor, raise your hand, signify by. I guess, Alice, I could have you call it. You want to call it instead? Anybody oppose it? Okay, you fixed that problem, didn't you? Okay, that is tab 2. And any other new business from the floor? None. William, our next meeting will be on November the 8th. Dealer practices is adjourned.
All right, I'd like to call a license committee. Alice, will you call the roll for me, please?
Maurice Slaughter,
Here.
Ken Bailey, Dan Bannister.
Here.
Michael Borges, Leonard Britt,
Here.
Danny Duncan,
Here.
Dennis Elmer, Rob Fisher,
Here.
Randy Harris, Steve Sagaki,
Here.
Don Sullivan,
Here.
Andy Wilder.
Here. Thank you, Dr. Quorum. I'd like to thank everybody for coming. Those of you that need to speak in front of the committee will be given an opportunity to speak at a later time during this meeting. First, I'd like to go for the approval for the July 21st meeting. If there's no objections, I'd like to approve the minutes for that meeting. Any objections? Like to go to old business. Is there any old business for this committee? No? How about from the floor? Any old business from the floor? All right, there is no new business for this committee. Is there any new business from the floor? With that being said, our next meeting is November 8th, and we'll be meeting later on this afternoon with the full board. Thank you.
I'd like to bring the Motor Vehicle Dealer Board Advertising Committee to order. Alice, will you call the roll, please?
David Duncan,
Here.
Ken Bailey, Dan Bannister,
Here.
Michael Moore, Basil Borges, Dennis Elmer, Randy Harris, Ron Cody,
Here.
Mark Ripley,
Here.
Maurice Slaughter,
Here.
Don Sullivan.
Here.
Alice, do we have a quorum?
No, we have 6 out of 12.
Okay. We go from here. Okay. We'll gather again Monday, November 8th. I missed about one.
Okay, I'd like to call the Transaction Recovery Fund Committee meeting to order. Alice, will you call the roll, please?
Mr. Mayor,
Here.
Jeff Lloyd, Dan Bannister,
Here.
Michael Moore, Dennis Elmer, Steve Palmer, Rob Fisher,
Here.
Ron Cody,
Here.
Rob Ripley,
Here.
Maurice Slaughter,
Here.
Don Sullivan,
Here.
Andy Wilder.
Here.
Alice, I take it we have a quorum?
Yes, you do.
Okay, awesome. Under the public comment section, public comments will be heard when the agenda item comes up on the list under your tab. So please reserve those comments for that period and please speak towards those. I'd like to move that we approve the July 12th meeting summary. Any objections? Under old business, do we have any old business? Under new business, we have 3 claims for the Transaction Recovery Fund. And William, if you'd start on tab 2, that'd be great. Tab 3, yes, sir.
Okay. James Doucette versus Value Motors RBA. On August 27, 2021, an informal fact-finding conference was conducted to address the alleged violations of Virginia Code Section 46.2-1527.3 against Value Motors RBA. Based on information provided at the conference, the hearing officer recommended approval of payment to James Doucette in the amount of $5,054 from recovery funds. Yeah. Instead of approval is denial. So it's denial of the $5,054 from recovery.
Okay, is there anybody here to speak on this case? Anybody have any questions or comments about this case who's on the committee? Do I hear any recommendations from the committee?
I would move that we accept the hearing officer's recommendation.
We have a recommendation from Rob Fisher and Mr. Riblets, a second on that. We'll take a vote on that. All in favor of that recommendation, please raise your hand now. Anybody opposed? Motion carries. Okay, and that's to deny paying the claim. Under tab 4, William.
which should be Arthur J. Johnson versus Icon Motorsport LLC and Dwayne T. Brown. On August 27, 2021, an informal fact-finding conference was conducted to address the alleged violations, Virginia Code Section 46.2-1527.3 against Icon Motorsport LLC and Dwayne T. Brown. Based on the information provided at the conference, the hearing officer recommended approval of payment to Arthur J. Johnson in the amount of $25,000 from the recovery.
Thank you, William. Is there anybody here to speak on behalf of this case? Nobody? Any discussion from committee members? Any recommendations?
I'd make that recommendation to accept the hearing officers. And, you know, to that point, the 25,000 is really a little light. I think the guy got hurt. So I would
I would agree with you, but it's the maximum that we can give them back to rectify the problem.
So
So Rob Fisher made a motion. Any seconds or discussion? Go
Well, I'm
ahead.
just trying to clarify on this because in the documents, it said the dealer board staff is requesting the recovery fund committee, the full board table the claim.
That is correct. The dealer board staff, but the hearing officer's recommendation that you work on. That's correct.
Okay, I just want to make sure everybody's on the same page. So-
I mean, I read this in totality and I tend to agree with the hearing board, the hearing officer's recommendation. And the rest of you, if you read it, it's pretty gross negligence on behalf of the dealer and directly harmed a consumer who's a Navy man who's done everything right he's supposed to do. So we have a recommendation from Rob Fisher to accept the hearing officer's recommendation. Don Sullivan seconds it. Question from Mr. Sagabi.
Still in business.
It's a great question. He's out of business. So we have a first by Rob Fisher, a second by Mr. Sullivan.
Chris, could we just ask Christian, because obviously there was a difference between the staff and the hearing officer. I'd just like to have the Attorney General's office help us decide whose side to err on.
Well, I think, well, we certainly have time discussion on type of case or cases that are. And, cases.
I can't hear you, Christian. I'm sorry.
So, is it better? Do I need to speak?
No, you can just speak. Yeah.
So, so we've had cases come before the fund involving, the question of fraud and this issue. There is, I believe, a complaint or a bill of particulars. I can't remember. I think it's a complaint that lists several different. One is for fraud. We're back to that question again. Because you got a default judgment, the order does not say that it's specifically for fraud. We're not always looking for the word fraud, but we're looking for some language, which we might see in the next case, that actually implies that the judgment was for some fraud. That does come up in this case. That question maybe should be, I'm not telling you to discuss it, but that should be thought process. I think that might be what was being considered by the board when that was mentioned before as a recommendation of tabling and seeing if that's a situation where to get clarification that this judgment is for fraud. Because there is a criminal case, and the criminal case is directly for fraud, which may land in, you may get hypothetically in a criminal case, there might be restitution awarded that could go into this judgment as well. That will maybe clarify the fact that the judgment is for fraud. But I think we do have one of those situations similar to some other cases where we do have, I think there's a claim for contract. I think there was a claim for debt due and something else as well. So we have to just remember that. And I'm not always, the board is free to make their decision and discuss and look, but follow the code section as well as a recommendation.
And after reading that, Christian, I came to the same determination. There was fraud in the original allegations and it wasn't changed. The judgment was issued on this and a consumer was directly hurt. And I've never seen a more clear case of anybody defrauding the consumer than something like this here. The only thing I wanted to ask you while we're here, if I could, okay, while we're all together, is under one of these Virginia codes, it says that the transaction recovery fund can pay a consumer, buyer, consumer, and a dealer. It says a dealer. And I was under the complete understand that dealers can't make claims against transaction recovery fund. And all of a sudden I see something different. So could you help me with that, William, while we're got the thing opened up here?
In a dealer-to-dealer transaction, you the party product, dealer.
See, I've been doing this for, years and didn't understand that dealers could make claims against the transaction recovery fund, only against another dealer. Okay, so now we've learned something today.
Yeah, and off the top of my head, I don't know what the section, but it's like the next one down, the 15,270.27, I think. But it's part of it, and that's what we dealt a little bit with last meeting in one of those cases. But that's where the language comes from. I think really right. I haven't seen one before the board since I've been.
I haven't either.
Representing you all, but that's the line. That is the language. It's a dealer-to-dealer transaction. That's the interpretation that the board. My understanding is over my predecessor.
That's great to know. We can let all the independent dealers in Virginia know that.
So Chris,
Hold on one second here. Mr. Britt?
The bank draft from Navy Federal requires a lien be put on and all that stuff. It's all, just common language on the draft, with the serial number of the car and all that kind of stuff. So is there any kind of, I don't know, bank fraud, or is it DMV? Is it, I mean, it's definitely illegal. It was a foul and a criminal act. I just didn't know if there's some way to get the money, back that way.
So I do believe that what the staff had talked about tabling it or mentioned that in their recommendation, because there is a current criminal investigation going on by the prosecutor's office. And I believe there's charges of fraud brought against this dealer division. There is a piece of this that's missing also when I looked at the document. My understanding, I looked at the case system for the court as well. There was an amended complaint filed, and I don't think the amended complaint was provided to us. I don't know if that's going to change whether there was a judgment in there, but apparently it might have changed the party, meaning the dealer might have been dropped out of the amended complaint, and then the criminal charges were brought against the dealer. I just haven't seen it, so I don't know what any of that means. I don't know if it really even will play a role in it, but I just would bring that up, that we are missing a filing from the court that this individual filed with the court to amend or to amend the complaint. I don't know what that amended complaint says. I don't know if it withdrew an account or added account. I don't know what it, so I can't speak to that, but that is another piece that was concerning too. So
It's been my understanding that if you receive a check from the Navy Federal Credit Union and you don't record the lien within 30 days, they can literally pull the money back out of your account. I don't know if there's an account there for them to pull out of right now. And if this goes to court and there's a demand to repay the consumer at that point, is that consumer going to say, no, I was made whole through the transaction recovery fund, and he needs to pay restitution to the state of Virginia through the transaction recovery fund? Is that going to happen, or we don't know? Because he wouldn't be entitled to receive the money twice.
yeah, I don't know, correct, and I don't know if I have a specific answer to whether a judge can order restitution to us, but if that is, it possibly can. We probably would have to make sure that our concerns are addressed to the prosecutor. But under the fund, under the statutes for the fund, when we do pay out from the fund, we accept the judgment at that point on our behalf. Part of the agreement under the fund in the statute is the fact that we become the lien holder or this judgment holder after paying out from the fund. No longer does that individual.
Gotcha.
So we do have that weight.
Okay.
But there's a disconnect there, because it's a civil judgment, and maybe in the restitution being ordered through a criminal. And if you're correct, the judge hears, oh, well, you already have money, I'm not going to order the restitution for that, and move on. That could be a possibility. But we may want to make sure that
Usually
our
the
concerns
banks,
are addressed.
Senor?
usually the banks is a one-way, they have a one-way agreement. There have been hardly I've seen that you get it in back from them. The only question I have is this dealership at the time, because this is a fraud case, it could have insurance. Insurance should cover the fraud. But somebody has to claim it. Apparently the dealer didn't. Maybe we can.
I don't know that, I don't know. I'm not sure if there's a strict policy that even exists that covers that. I think they're out of business, probably getting record firm might be difficult.
Well, they are on business, but at the time, they had insurance, I assume. So insurance goes back to,
You only required to have a bond for 3 years, so.
Yeah, there's probably a bond, but
It's already been.
So once the bond's gone, yeah, so's the insurance policy to pay that, unless they had it on their regular insurance. But,
So-
yes, Mr. Wiley.
Chris, the only reason I even asked the other question, interrupted, because actually I agree that it seems like fraud, it's something that should be covered, but I'm relatively new on the board and I've watched these cases come before the board. And I've heard you guys talk about how it needs to say fraud, and I've had questions about that. Because this seemed to me to be a pretty clear-cut case. I mean, the guy gave the dealer a check, he cashed it, and he never gave him his car. So, I asked for some clarification before the meeting. I was just trying to get a feel with Christian for why do we do this? And the whole reason I brought it up was, he explained just the need for the board to be consistent in these cases in regard to this. Now, I'm going to vote to approve the motion because I think it's true, but I'm just bringing it up because I'm still learning the nuances of this, and that was how it was explained to me, was that we've just got to make sure that we're consistent in how we decide these cases with the Transportation Recovery Fund, because what that means down the line when people start appealing our denials and that sort of thing, if we decide, oh, this one seems, he's in the Navy, that seems terrible. And then the next guy, we say, well, no, I mean, he checked the wrong box, so we're not going to approve it. That was, just sharing that, so.
Mr. Chairman, I agree 100%. Look, this man absolutely should be made whole. And I think that we should wait until the criminal prosecution is finished so we can make him whole, because I agree 100%. We are setting a very dangerous precedent. We are making a subjective decision, because you said, you can read it, you can see the fraud there. We've had those cases in the past where you could see the fraud, but the court didn't say fraud. So I really think this is a dangerous precedent that the board's setting, and I would vote no on it at the full board, because I think the staff's recommendation of waiting for the criminal prosecution, because if he's convicted, we have fraud. And I think that we can take due notice of the civil and the criminal cases together and award him, and quite frankly, probably could award more after the criminal prosecution is concluded. So those are just my thoughts, Chris.
I mean, I out of great respect, I don't agree with you. Okay, I agree. I think this person's been sitting around waiting, paying $500 a month, and it looks like he might have fallen behind on a payment and had to go to the highest interest rate that they charge. And I think for us to sit around and wait for a court in this environment 1 year, 2 years down the road to convict him to get this guy whole is too long. So
and that's fine, but there's been come a day where I can say I told you so.
But then that should have been at the last meeting when we approved the guy that didn't say fraud the last meeting. You know what I'm saying? And I was all over that, because I'd been taught by everybody here, if it doesn't say fraud, you can't get it. And in a case like this here, where the indictment going up to it, the charges say fraud all over them, judge looked at it and said, yep, judgment for boom, he moved down the road. So I would tend to lean towards giving this guy's money, and that's just my opinion. And we can spend lots of time in the future with Christian's office to clarify and divide what right and wrong is for us to make a decision. But my decision would be to move forward and make this guy whole. And I've got a first and a second on the table. Is there any further discussion? Thank you, Christian. All in favor, please raise your hand. Any opposed, please raise your hand.
Actually, it'd be helpful for the full committee if you recorded the vote.
Okay. So all in favor, please raise your hand. Or you want to call the roll, Alice? Okay, yes, ma'am.
Mayor?
Aye.
Fisher?
Aye.
Cody?
Nay.
Maurice Slaughter,
Aye.
Alan Sullivan,
Aye.
and Wiley.
A motion carries. Next tab, William, if I can get my machine in here, is going to be tab number 5.
Tab number 5, Herbert A. Martinez Flores versus Mid-Atlantic Trump Center, advertising as Yassini Auto Gallery in Matoza and Harris Yassini. On August 27, 2021, an informal fact-finding conference was conducted to address the alleged violations of Virginia Code Section 46.2-1527.3. Based on information provided at the conference, the hearing officer recommended approval of payment to Herbert A. Martinez Flores in the amount of $8,000 from the recovery fund.
So this is a case where a consumer bought a truck from a dealer and the consumer had problems with the vehicle and brought it back for repairs. And it appears the dealer told the consumer they were going to get the truck repaired, and then the consumer discovered the dealer had sold the truck to somebody else. So this is a claim against the Transaction Recovery Fund for $8,000. Is there anybody here to speak on behalf of this case? Any discussion from the committee members? Do I hear any recommendations or motion?
I'll make a motion that we approve the hearing officer's recommendation.
So Andrew Wiley has a motion to approve the hearing officer's recommendation for $8,000. Is there a second? Rob Fisher seconds. All in favor, please raise your hand. Any opposed, please raise your hand. And the motion carries. So that concludes, give me 1 second here, please. That concludes our agenda items on tabs 3 through 5. Our next meeting for the Transaction Recovery Fund will be November 8th. And thank you all. Mr. Commissioner.
10 minutes. Okay, folks, we'll take, okay, so.
I got it.
Hey, guys.
I give one more.
Hey. Started. Please call the roll.
Tim Bailey, Dan Bannister.
Here.
Dan Bannister,
Here.
Michael Ward, Liza Borges, Margaret Britt,
Here.
David Duncan.
Here.
Dennis Elmer, Steve Farmer, Rob Fisher,
Here.
Randy Harris, Ron Cody,
Here.
Chris Mayer,
Here.
Jeff Malloy, Mark Ridley,
Here.
Steve Sagapi,
Here.
Maurice Slaughter,
Here.
Don Sullivan,
Here.
Andrew Wiley,
Here.
Rick Hobo.
Here. Okay, you've got in front of you the minutes from the meeting summary from July 12th, and without objections, that summary stands approved. Public comment, if someone has comment related to one of the matters that will be coming before the board, you should hold your comments until that point. But any other public comments? Seeing none, we'll receive the committee report starting with dealer practices.
Commissioner, Dealer Practices Committee met earlier today. A quorum was present. Committee approved the summary from the last committee meeting, and we have 2 resolutions for full board consideration. And William, if you would read tab 1.
Cash for Your Auto and Amila Siddiqui. Whereas the board has received and considered the facts and evidence and the report of an informal fact-finding conference as prepared by the hearing officer concerning Cash for Your Auto and Amal Siddiqui for alleged violations of Virginia Code Sections 46.2-1529, 46.2-1533, and 46.2-1575, number 2. And whereas based on due consideration, the board believes that the following actions should be taken against Cash for Your Auto and Amal Siddiqui. 1, assess a civil penalty of $1,000. 2, Cash for Your Auto shall be inspected by motor vehicle dealer board field representative, and that inspection shall be satisfactory. 3, Amal Siddiqui shall successfully complete the dealer operating course by March 13, 2022. Now therefore be it resolved that the board mandates that Amal Siddiqui hereby be assessed a civil penalty of $1,000 and the cash for your auto dealership shall pass a satisfactory inspection conducted by the Motor Vehicle Dealer Board field representative on or before October 18th, 2021. And Amal Siddiqui shall successfully complete the dealer operator course by March 13th, 2022. Therefore, be it further resolved by the board that failure to comply with the board's mandates by the required date will result in the suspension of all licenses, certificates issued by the board until such time the cash for your auto dealership and Amal Siddiqui successfully complies with the board's mandates. And for clarification for the board members, we have to grant the person an opportunity to appeal the board's decision. The board did say 1 week. The earliest we can do will be October 18th. So I'll put that date in the resolution.
For an inspection dealing with this situation. Yes,
Okay, Mr. Chairman, is that your motion?
it is, Commissioner.
Is there a second?
Second.
Chris seconds. There was a lot of discussion. The gentleman spoke earlier. Sir, anything you want to add from what you said earlier today?
No, sir, thank you for the member on the board, and I'll make sure.
Okay, any further discussion? All in favor, say, I guess you want to see a show of hands, all in favor? Okay, any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Next, madam.
Tab 2, Millennial Automotive.
Millennial Automotive, LLC, and Kenyatta Murray. Whereas the board has reviewed and considered the facts and evidence in the report of an informal fact-finding conference as prepared by the hearing officer concerning Millennial Automotive and Kenyatta Murray for alleged violations of Virginia Code sections 46.2-1529, 46.2-1542, 46.2-1559, and 46.2-1575, number 2. Whereas based on due consideration, the board believes that the following actions should be taken against Millennial Automotive and Kenyatta Murray. 1, assess a civil penalty of $36,500. 2, suspend all licenses and certificates issued by the board to Kenyatta Murray until DMV law enforcement conducts an investigation and a report is provided to the Motor Vehicle Dealer Board at one of their upcoming meetings. 3, Kenyatta Murray shall successfully complete the dealer operator course by March 13th, 2022. Now therefore be resolved that the board hereby mandates that Kenyatta Murray hereby be assessed a civil penalty of $36,500 and all licenses and certificates issued to Kenyatta Murray by the board are hereby suspended until a DMV law enforcement conducts an investigation and a report is provided back to the Motor Vehicle Dealer Board at one of the upcoming meetings. And Kenyatta Murray shall successfully complete the dealer operator course by March 13th, 2022. Now, therefore, be it further resolved by the board that failure to comply with the board's mandates by the required dates will result in suspension of all licenses and certificates issued by the board until such time the Millennial Automotive Dealership in Kenyatta Murray successfully complies with the board's mandates.
And Mr. Chairman, is that your motion?
It is, Commissioner.
Is there a second? Mr. Fisher, seconds. Discussion. Just to sort of add to the motion, in addition to our law enforcement looking into this matter and pursuing it, whatever direction that goes in, legal services is also going to look to see if there's anything. The ADA made some good comments during the break about how could this dealer, based on their previous sales, how could they be issued as much paper as we issued? And so we're going to be looking at whether we can put some more controls on it. And well, I'm Mr. Chairman. So we will report that. We will report that those findings also back on what we mean on that. Further discussion on this one. All in favor, raise your hand. Any opposed? Okay, that passes unanimously. Mr. Chairman, does that conclude your report?
It does, and our next meeting will be on November the 8th.
Is that the day before the election? No. Okay, licensing committee, Ms. Slaughter.
I'd like to call the license committee to order with the full board. Those of you that's here, I want to thank you. If you've got any public comments, you have an opportunity to speak very shortly here. I'd like to approve the minutes for the July meeting 2021. Show of hands.
You approved those in the committee.
Oh, they already in?
Just reporting
Okay.
that you.
Good deal. All right, thank you. There's no old business from the floor and no old business from the committee. New business. No new business from the committee or no new business from the floor. At that time, I'd like to close this out, and the next meeting will be November 8th.
Thank you for your report, Mr. Johnson. Advertising committee, Mr. Duncan, I understand we did not have a quorum, so we were not able to proceed.
Correct. We did not have a quorum, so our next meeting will be Monday, November 8th.
Those minutes to the next meeting to be approved.
Correct.
Transaction recovery.
Yes, Mr. Commissioner, the transaction recovery fund met this morning. We had a quorum. There was no public comment. We moved to approve the July 12th meeting summary. There was no old business. We did have new business. There's 3 claims.
Under tab 3, the first case was J. Doucette versus Value Motors, RBA. And whereas pursuant to section 46.2-1527.1 of the Code of Virginia, which is known as the Motor Vehicle Transaction Recovery Fund, the board has reviewed and considered claims for payment from the fund and recommendation of the hearing officer on the claims. And whereas based on due consideration and recommendation of the hearing officer, the board believes the following claim should be denied. The claim is for Jane Doucette in the amount of $5,054. Now therefore be it resolved that the board hereby reaffirms the denial of the claim.
Mr. Chairman, that is your motion.
Yes, Mr. Commissioner.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second set.
I'll second.
Had some good, and any further discussion on that matter? Okay, all in favor, raise your hand. Any opposed? Okay, the motion carries.
Next, sir, we had tab 4.
Okay, under tab 4, case is Arthur J. Johnson versus Icon Motor Sport LLC and Dwayne Brown. Whereas pursuant to section 46.2-1527.1 of the Code of Virginia, which is known as the Motor Vehicle Transaction Recovery Fund, the board has reviewed and considered claims submitted for payment from the fund and the recommendation of the hearing officer on the claims. And whereas based on due consideration, recommendation of the hearing officer, the board believes that the following claim is payable from the fund. The claim is in the amount of $25,000 and is to Arthur J. Johnson. Now therefore be it resolved that the board hereby approves and reaffirms the following claim.
And Mr. Chairman, that is your motion.
That is my motion, Commissioner.
Is there a second? Mr. Fisher's our reliable second there. We had some good discussion on this. Chris, any last words that you want to make on?
I just, I think that as a committee, we made the right decision. I've asked the Attorney General's office to dig a little deeper into this and give us a little more direction so we understand the difference between the left and the right side of the road. For right now, I'm okay with where we are on this one.
Okay, further discussion or comments?
So I'm not in the committee, but I think reading this, responsibility of the insurance company. The claim or whatever. When the car was received, you should have gone after dealer's insurance, which is playing the punching bag. Nobody recovered money, we have to pay it. And this deal was not even reported. That's my opinion.
Is there insurance that you can have like that?
Flood insurance, yeah.
But he was the one who was being fraudulent.
His insurance covered. Now, somebody checked into it.
Someone else was fraudulent to
him, maybe insurance might cover it.
I agree with you.
No,
Not sure.
we look at this policy. Just the way it did.
Christian, anything you want to add to this discussion? We had a good discussion. I think everyone knows how they're going to vote on this.
As for the insurance piece of it, I'm not sure. I mean, I'm not aware of how we use that business. I'm not sure how we're looking at it. Not sure what policy that actually is, except for bond, knowing bond, how bond was on the table. I just, again, you know, the comments I made before stand. I mean, I'm not here, you know, I can't tell you how to vote. I'm just going to tell you how we've done it, how we looked at it in the past. Each case brings a different board, some that we have to look at similarly, and you know, how it's been presented today. We have, you know, a case where the language in the order of the state fraud, the wording of fraud is not actually in it, but it has to have context of the fact that is being accounted for as well. And I think we have the other element here, which is a crucial element, and you might want to consider the fact that there is this criminal case out there that this dealer is being brought up and being prosecuted by the Commonwealth, and fraud can be found with that. If restitution perhaps is ordered in that, and we want to make sure restitution is ordered in that, if we're going to pay out, we may want to make sure that that payout comes to the board, because we will be, I guess, for lack of a better word, parroting the judgment once if we do pay out. But if we table it, we make sure all that's an option, that's a possibility. If we table it, we make sure that that is going to happen. If the board doesn't decide not to pay at a later date, we've at least also taken into concern with the consumer that if the restitution is ordered for the prosecution of the felony case, you know, that individual may be getting paid, maybe not directly from the fund, if that's the way it's decided, but also paid to court or the, I guess, the defendant. So, I mean, I guess not to complicate things, but I mean, I see where the board's gone with this, but I see where the board staff has made a good recommendation for tabling it. You know, it can be brought to the November meeting again. I'm telling you to do that, but you know, and seeing where this prosecution of this criminal case heads, you know, and there'll be an element, you know, convicted of the charges, there'll be an element of fraud, clearly from the criminal charge as well, and the restitution order on that. Criminal case, but it's a civil payment for us.
So I voted nay on this, obviously, as you know. I really thought that the right course of action was to table this, and I understand the concern about the consumer, and you know, and unfortunately, we see this all too often. I mean, the lender in this case should cut this consumer a little slack with the process going on, and not chase him down like a, you know, like roadkill, quite candidly. I hate to use that term, but we're worried about the consumer not being, you know, harmed any more than they've already been harmed. But in this case, I think it's a little hasty to move forward. I'll still say it, lenders should be understanding in this type of a situation and give this guy some breathing room. But it's not always the case.
I don't know if we've ever in the past written the lender a letter making that suggestion, because again, we know what direction I think criminal prosecution is going. But anyway, we had a good discussion here, so.
And I'd just like to close with this. You know, I see your perspective and I see Ron's perspective, but I also see a guy who's serving our country who bought a car from a Virginia dealer who in good intentions gave him a check, and it was written for $26,000 was put in the bank. And that guy is at a higher interest rate now because he may have defaulted. That $500 a month he's paying right now might be the difference between having a car and not having a car. We don't know that. So I think we made a wise decision earlier, and I stick with that, Mr. Chairman. So that is my motion.
And that's, yeah, that is the motion that has been made and seconded, and so at a future meeting. Any further discussion on this?
Again, I'm one of the people that voted against it, and I understand your points, but I truly believe that we need to wait, let the legal system play out its course and table it until that happens.
So
And maybe even write a letter to the bank, you know.
so
We've never done it.
you make that as a substitute motion?
Yes, I'm making a motion to table it until the November meeting.
Okay, is there a second to the motion to table?
I'll second it. But I'll second it.
Okay, all in favor of tabling this matter, raise your hand. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. All opposed to tabling this matter, raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, the motion fails on a tie vote. So the underlying motion then is what we have to vote on, is to approve it. So all in favor of approving this, raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay. All opposed to approving this, raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, it's approved by a vote of 7 to 5.
Can I make one comment?
Yes.
I think your comment about, is there something we could do in a case like this? You know, from our letterhead to just write a letter to the lender and saying, you know, what's going on, and that we're from the dealer board perspective, we're involved, we're investigating, you know, we're waiting to hear the process. I don't know what you do, but, you know, I hear your, hey, you know, military and all this. Well, guess what? Supposedly the lender he's dealing with is pro-military.
Right.
So, and we see this all the time with this lender.
What control do we have over the lenders? We don't have any.
We
control over the
don't.
lenders.
We don't have control over lenders, but again, I think we made the decision because we're trying to help the consumer, and it's forcing us to not always a great decision for the board. And you know, I've got to believe that the lender, with either a letter or coaxing or something we could do, could give this guy a little breathing room.
Well, let me just ask you, because one of the things that the commissioner brought up was table it till November. And I heard that. I hear Mr. Bannister too. I don't know about you guys, but I've seen plenty of criminal cases. It's not a couple months, okay? Everything's like a couple years, and then they put it off even more. Next thing, we could be chasing this thing around for years, and the consumer's sitting there sucking wind. And what we're telling the consumers in Virginia is, hey, we're not going to have your back. And I want to have their back.
And I think we are here for the consumers.
That's right.
Not the board. We're trying to make folks whole. And in this case, my goodness. And to say to the lender, and the lender, that's what they do for a living, is lend money to these people, the service members.
And look, we're not going to be the dead horse.
Right.
The motion prevailed, but I will also tell you, Christian made a good point that should the criminal case go forward and should there be restitution ordered by the criminal case, I'm not sure we have any further jurisdiction over this matter since we've approved it. I don't think we can supplement that, can we? So I think we may have given, we may not have the opportunity to make him further whole because of our action today. I mean, if there's conviction and there's further restitution, can that come back before the board and we supplement what we've approved today? I'm not sure.
I don't know if I know the exact answer to the question. Thinking through the process, the judge would have to order restitution. The question is, who is he order restitution to? If the victim indicates what we've done here today, and perhaps board instructs me to reach out to the prosecutor, I will try to do that, and I can, at least indicate what happened today and see if that can be favorable. But I don't know if the court can actually do that because it's not the victim's money. So, I mean, I can certainly look into it, but I think you bring up a good point that there could be an element there that we're going to miss. But I can't say legally for sure.
Yeah, and in all the years I've been in the board, I've never seen an individual have two bites at the
No, I don't think it's coming back before you. No, I'm sorry.
That was my question.
Yeah, nothing's coming back. 30 days is going to go by. No one, you can no, it would be in the back, hoping that the court, the criminal case is doing something to help them.
Okay, thanks. Next matter.
That's it, sir. We adjourned and our next meeting is. Did we get it? No, I'm sorry. Forgive me. Tab 5. William, how about the last guy? Hey, Chris, it's a lively discussion. Hey, I almost never beat you, okay? So it's just one time.
If I can ask you vice chair,
No, sir, I got it, okay? No, sir, I don't want to celebrate at all. William, as I slow down my celebration here, we go to the next tab, please.
Okay, tab 5. Hubert A. Martinez Perez versus Midline Trucking, which is advertising at Shasini Auto Gallery. Whereas pursuant to section 46.2-1527.1 of the Code of Virginia, which is known as the Motor Vehicle Transaction Recovery Fund, the board has reviewed and considered claims submitted for payment from the fund and the recommendation of the hearing officer on the claims. And whereas based on due consideration and recommendation of the hearing officer, the board believes the following claim should be payable from the fund. The claim is for Hubert A. Martinez Flores in the amount of $8,000. Now therefore be it resolved by that the board hereby approves and reaffirms payment of this claim from the recovery fund.
and is that your motion, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir, it is.
Is there a second? Give this one to Mr. Sullivan.
He's been trying.
Yeah, he's been trying. He just can't get there. You can't beat Mr. Bishop. He gets to play a lot quicker.
Thank you, Chairman.
Christian, anything?
The only shot I got.
Christian, any comment on this one?
No, Your Honor, I think this is a slightly different case. This is not a simple warrant debt. The judge signed the judgment on the one element that claimed that this individual fraud, which is basically a clear fraud situation where it brings the vehicle in and the dealer sells it out from under. And that's the only claim made, and it's not, the judgment is not signed by the judge on that warrant debt. It's almost a simple process than a more complicated case, but it's right there.
Good. Any discussion? Okay, all in favor of the motion, please raise your hand. Any opposed? Okay, unanimous. Mr. Chairman, does that conclude your report?
That does, Commissioner. Next meeting for the transaction recovery fund is November 8th. Thank you.
Okay, old business, sales people versus licenses.
Sales license. We've had no issues as far as getting the licensing process done that I'm aware of. Volume has dropped a little bit, so we're not under the demand we were under earlier. I know you're changing the service centers to no appointments on Tuesday and Thursdays and Saturdays. So I'm not sure how that obviously is going to affect our process. And then I'm not sure what the latest is on that old Sterling customer service.
Which is Wednesdays from noon until 5 o'clock.
Okay.
Never happened.
Okay. You're gonna have to talk to Tanya on that, because we may need to, because the volume has not been great there. And yes, Ron, just for everyone's information, we were directed by the General Assembly to create a service module that would incorporate walk-in customers along with the very successful appointment system. So what we announced is effective October 5th on Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Friday. Tuesdays, Thursday, and half-day Saturday, those will be walk-in days. So show up, bring your lunch with you, be prepared for what we think will be a wait. If you want to plan your day a little bit more, you can continue to make appointments on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. So that's, we'll have a dual system running. The states that have tried to do them simultaneously have gotten a lot of pushback from customers. You have two lines on the same day. One's an appointment line, one's a walk-in line, and the appointment line moves so much quicker. And so we just did not want to put our customers through that. The anger, confusion among customers in these other states is not something that we wanted to replicate here. So Obviously, opening up for walk-ins on 2.5 days, we will be cutting the appointment availability down by about 48%. But there still will be appointments available on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays.
And we just want to continue to remind everybody that if they have an appointment, the show rate is oh so critical to make sure that we can honor the times that we're given. So we want the minutes to reflect that.
And not just overall, for anyone, and I know we're not recording this or broadcasting this, but we are rapidly approaching 1 million folks who have not shown up for their appointments since we rolled this out last year. We're at 900,000 plus, and that's a whole lot of appointments that did not get used because people just didn't show up or forgot about it. Now we double and triple book most of our offices, so we are taking care of some of that capacity. But that's the main problem is if you have an appointment, and if you have an appointment and you decide to go ahead and try the walk-in, make sure you cancel your appointments. But I don't want anyone to have any misimpression. If you love the DMV the way it was before the pandemic, you'll be happy to know that that's going to return on Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays. But in the urban areas, particularly, just plan for some wait time. Yes, ma'am.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. Tommy Melendez with the IABA Dealer Operator Class Education. When you say that you're opening up for walk-in, right now the system of making the appointments is working fairly well for our students. Or can they also walk in for testing on Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday?
They can.
Okay.
They can. Back to lunch. Because on Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays, we will do all transactions, including all testing. But also, and we've seen a tremendous success with migrating the vehicle renewals online or through the mail. But there are folks who don't have internet access, who don't have credit cards, and so they will be able to walk in on Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays. It's going to be a lot of customers. If you're finding the organized appointments work better for your members, you may want to continue.
We will certainly continue to encourage them to make their appointments.
And if they decide to walk in, tell them to cancel their appointments to make sure that someone else.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Okay, dealer report.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. My briefing would be very, very brief. Last board meeting, this body empowered me to work with the VITA organization in addition to on this forum. We have been working since the last meeting. We're now in the process of drafting a statement of work. The statement of work is essentially the guts of the contract, of exactly what the vendor will be. So I'm happy to announce how most likely at our next meeting, the details of that. What I will do for you as soon as I'm aware that it's ready to be signed, I'll let you know at that point. So wait till an email from me outline the vendor and the fact that we're moving forward with some type of established deadline. So we're moving there pretty quickly. And then for those who don't work with VITA can be very slow and bureaucratic. So we're moving pretty briskly right now. So hopefully we get this place.
I mean, if you look, VITA is a 4-letter word. That I'll end with that comment. Okay, next, anything with VADA, I know that obviously we've got an election coming up in November where the governor's race, the lieutenant governor's race, the attorney general's race are on the ballot, as well as all 100 seats in the lower house, the House of Delegates. At this point, I think I reported last time, there are 10 of the 100 seats are open because of either retirement or because someone's running for higher office or because there were a number of folks who were defeated in the primary. So at a minimum, 1/10 of the lower house will be brand new. So at this point, there's a lot at play, and I don't know whether y'all have established your legislative agenda, or you can wait until the Wednesday after the election to do that.
We are looking at some franchise issues as we would in any given year. But right now, in fact, just this morning, we sent out some revised information. The Department of Labor and Industry updated their workplace safety standards last week, so there have been some changes there. The biggest one is that employers are going to be required to have their employees wearing masks in workplaces in Virginia, in areas of high and substantial transmission, which is all of Virginia right now.
With the exception of Bath County.
Well, no, the map changes, so I haven't seen that.
Like they're red.
Seen the decline. They were actually red at the last meeting as well, so just for dealers to be aware of that, and of course, going to be watching closely the federal efforts on vaccine mandates and what that's going to mean for employers. But it looks like employers are going to be sort of the epicenter of the fight against the virus at this point, and a lot of pressure to be put on the employers to up vaccine numbers and to take some workplace safety precautions. So just watch out for that information.
And folks, Ann is absolutely right. If you read those new approved regulations, it does require mask in high areas, which you're right, ever in Virginia. I asked the question of folks downtown about that seems to be inconsistent with the governor's executive order.
It is and it isn't, because they say CDC. They said this, the executive order says follow CDC. So
It does, and I will tell you, all the businesses in here are safe to follow that, but the guidance we've gotten is that until the governor changes his executive order, the governor's order prevails. But I think, as a lawyer, and you're absolutely right, the regulations say that every employer should require a mask inside, whether you're vaccinated or not. But I'm telling the state employees in here that we've gotten different direction. Stand back at this point. But Ann's advice is one that you should take to heart, because that is exactly what the regulations.
and in fact, they also say that any employer who follows the CDC recommendations, whether they're mandatory or non-mandatory, will be deemed in compliance with the workplace standards. So as long as you're doing what the CDC says, and right now they do say indoor masks and high or substantial transmission. So that's where we are.
So stay tuned. We will, certainly polling shows that there's a lot in play from the election standpoint. So everyone stay tuned, and there'll be further discussion after the November election. Alan, anything that the BIADA wants to do?
Novel item. We are, keeping an eye on things. Well, obviously, the election, a lot can change, so that would affect, prioritize. Also, we are monitoring people.
One other important factor is that the General Assembly did reinstitute some pretty important overtime exemptions in the auto industry at their special session as well. So just want to make sure. It still needs to be made permanent in the next session, but we have that.
Any else? Folks, the only thing that we're looking at legislatively that I don't think will impact anyone in this room, at least not professionally, but a number of states, Arizona being the leading one, actually has an online process for titling and registering casual sales. And that is something that we're looking into. We probably will get some authorizing legislation. We hope to get some authorizing legislation through. A lot of details still need to be worked out on. And what Arizona does, it is very, very limited. You have to be in Arizona and buying from an Arizona. Cars going to be staying in Arizona. So there are a lot of factors that will be taken into account. stay tuned. Like I said, we will be just like everyone else. We'll give you more updates as we get past the election. Is there any old business from the floor? A new business from the floor? New or old?
I'm new.
Good.
New. So I just attended the NIADA, the National Independent Automobile Association, which is nationwide, and there's a lot of talk about sales being conducted remotely. In other words, an email being sent to a consumer, you swipe, you sign your name, you buy the car. They've told me in multiple states now they've got that approved. And because I'm pretty knowledgeable about the forms and things that are not able to be done digitally, what is our stance on that? And because in my world, that could lead to more sales for me and also lead to the consumer not coming into our place, which could help slow down the spread of COVID and all that stuff. We're just delivering the car to their house after they sign and drive. So what is our stance on that? Do you have anything?
I don't, the DMV does not, I don't know, the dealer board is taking a position. Andy, the trade association.
Actually, Mr. Commissioner, your staff has been incredibly helpful on that score to help us outline, and I'll send it to you, Chris, a procedure that shows that, because the title and the reassignment are the only items that can't. No, DMV gives long held.
Power of attorney does not have the original anymore?
It hasn't been for a long time. So, so the reassignment and title, but I think there's a widespread misunderstanding of the use of the reassignment. You can use a power of attorney to sign a reassignment as well as a part of the title. So there's a process, and I'm getting a nodding head over here. There's a process that you can have all of those documents signed electronically. Digitally, yes, that's correct. So, and we outlined it for our folks and put out there, yeah, absolutely. Commend DMV for working through us on that and getting sort of step by step, here's what you do, so that we can facilitate those transactions.
Alicia, I guess I was out of the room when we did all of that, but great job.
They just helped me outline what you had put in place in the agency.
Of course.
They didn't go beyond anything that was already allowed. They just helped me structure something so that I could explain what with the right form numbers.
I'm glad I brought it up.
Okay, Alicia, anything you want to add to that?
No, and correct. It's just the reassignment is the extension of the certificate of title. So that requires the wet signature for this action. Other than that, as we give it some information, it can be digitally signed. But how you use the power of attorney, that's kind of where we've seen some inconsistencies where we had to educate users to a degree on the process.
Awesome.
Documentation.
We'll be looking for it. Yeah, thank you so much.
So Alicia, maybe whatever you've drafted, let William have it, and then William can send that out to the board, members. Thank you.
Thank you,
I
sir.
learn
Appreciate
something
it.
every day.
I try to bring as many
Great work
educational
that
things
you-
as I can.
Great work with my staff.
Well, you don't think there's going to be any change in the wet signature anytime soon? That's still going to remain in place, right?
So much of that's controlled by the feds, and the feds don't move as quickly as the state.
Is that going to be with an odometer statement too?
I'm sorry?
The odometer statement, it's federal?
Go ahead, Alicia, answer the question.
So as far as, I want to go back to the question. You were referring back to the wet signature as far as.
It's going to stay in place, or is the way you have to process that? Because we have to FedEx out all the paperwork out if we do that now. No?
That's correct. I'm going to go along with what the commissioner is saying.
Well, how do you get a wet signature?
With e-titling moving forward, there are some things that, looking to change, especially with casual sales, with the wet signature being required until the document is kind of closing the door. So we're looking into other processes that may be coming down the line.
Well,
Don, I'll bring you up to speed when we leave the meeting.
okay.
William, your report.
Yes, my report was spontaneous here, so bear with me. We put a process in place last year dealing with the background check, criminal background check. Did it last August. It's been over a year now. And that process, I believe, for the most part, 95% worked very well. In the sense that the dealerships now have their own background vendors. You now need to share the pain of having to get the criminal background checks conducted prior to submitting your application. application to us to process. And I think if you look back at it and you talk to your association representatives, I have not received a single complaint about us processing a new dealer application, period, in the last 10 months. I know some things do happen, but for the most part, when those things happen, it's normally because the dealership hasn't gotten us what we need in order to give them the green light to move to the next step. So we're very pleased with that. There's still some out there who will not do that, but I just want you to be aware in case they come to you about the background check that it's not, that we're not doing our part. They don't want to do their part, or they're not accepting the fact that they're responsible for doing so. But at the same time, when somebody new comes on board, we do not want to hold the application through the process. What we would do is we will go ahead using our vendor, Screening One, and process it, but we would charge them whatever Screening One charges us. So we're made whole. So prior to last year, we were losing a lot of money on this process. Now we're not losing money. We're being made whole, if not making at least a little bit on the other side. So thank you for supporting that endeavor a year ago. But we do have a few people out there that still having a hard time with it. We also put a process in place preparing the dealerships to move toward an electronic age in the future, where if the dealership using a secured method that we call virtue, using that particular process, they send us salesperson applications that can be processed for the most part the same day, depending on when we receive it. We do have problems with that, though. A lot of dealerships, I don't think the word is getting down to the HR people or down to the title clerk or whoever is submitting it to us. Because these things are coming in via fax, they're coming in via email, they're coming in most cases in all ways other than the way that we prescribe. It's important that it comes to us using the Virtue software to the designated email address we put out there for that. We're putting reminders out there and we will continue to do so. But I need for you, as owners of dealerships, as well as associations, to remind them that the process when they use it works. It works very well. In most cases, you get it to us before 1 o'clock or before noon, you can get it back the same day in most instances. Now, we also, for those of you who use it and doing a good job of it, we get 8, 9, 10 requests at one time, which is fine. But I'm thinking at some point here in the near future, we might be getting so many things in one time, might not be able to get into the same day. That's fine. You're still getting it back a lot quicker than you were before when you put it in the mail, allowing 7 days for the mail to get to us, allowing us 2 days to get through the mail and get it back to you. It's still a lot quicker. But I just want to, again, remind people, we got a ways to go with this still. People are using it, they're submitting it to us electronically. It's just not right now always through the proper venue. And then when we do get some of these, it comes in, we receive it, and we find out that the applicant is in a pending status for the criminal background check. We are not going to hold them, we're not going to process them. They have to come after the background check has been completed. We've notified those people, told them we're not going to process it. We need to resubmit it. But this has made our process a lot more efficient, a lot smoother, quicker. As I said earlier, complaints about processing these new dealer packages.
Good job. Good job. Let me also thank the Science Museum of Virginia and William for working out the ability to hold the meeting here. Obviously, this is a lot more spacious than what we've had over. I just think just because of the way the virus is trending, this was a safer environment for us to hold the board in, and probably will continue this at least for the foreseeable future. So, anyone else have anything they want to share before we close?
Next meeting is here.
Yes.
Can we get more comfortable chairs?
Like the ones we had. No, look, I'm probably gonna roll my chair. I'm probably gonna roll my chair over here. Although this makes for a much quicker meeting. Like the chairs. We don't want the board to be too comfortable. But yes, you may bring your own pillow if you want to.
Or your own coffee. Thank you for Mr. Wiley.
Mr. Wiley.
Thank you, Andrew. Andrew brought coffee. He knew you weren't going to pay for it, so he said, I'll take care of it.
Okay, folks, thanks, and we will see everyone back in November.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Good seeing you.